Psychological safety is one of the 5 leading key indicators of a high-performing team. The term was originally coined by Amy Edmondson, a Harvard Business School researcher, a couple of years ago, who's been researching what makes teams effective and high-performing. The other 4 factors among psychological safety are dependability, structure and clarity, meaning and impact. Psychological safety specifically means that all of us as people on the team feel like we're able to share our work-relevant thoughts and feelings with one another. We don't feel like we're going to be punished or looked down upon or frowned upon if we ask for help or we make a well-intentioned mistake. And we feel safe to express also criticism and feedback to our teammates, and we're able to work together really effectively and well, and everyone feels safe within that team. I think as an industry we still don't have a good grasp or shared understanding on what exactly makes a good engineer and how to grow engineers in their careers. So I think a lot of companies make the mistake of looking for a culture fit, and I do think that's one of the things that I personally believe changing that could make one of the biggest differences in our industry. I think it's important to identify what adds to a team. Because diversity in opinions, in backgrounds, in education, but also in genders or in sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, and many other factors, diversity enriches teams. There are a lot of statistics that show that diverse teams build better products. Diverse teams are more representative of the user base of our products. And so having diversity is a really, really important thing for teams. So basically, looking at a team and not just figuring out how someone can integrate into it, but what someone can add to the team, what they can bring that makes the team richer, that makes the team just a better team, I think is a really important thing to look at. I also think when we look at what makes a good engineer, my personal belief is that it's a variety of skills. Of course, technical skills are important. Sometimes you'll require specific knowledge of a certain framework, programming language, but often these can be taught, especially for people who are a little bit later in their career already. It's relatively easy to change to new programming languages. But I do think there's a whole variety of skills that are really important that we often miss out on. Things like communication skills, collaboration skills, skills around feedback, but also people's ability to deliver user value iteratively and quickly. The ability to grasp business context and business needs and understand the product. All of those are really important skills, and I also think having those represented on a team and as an engineer developing those skills adds to the variety and also enables people to build much better products and more meaningful things for our customers eventually. I think there's the first one that a lot of companies who are looking to become more distributed are looking at is essentially power dynamics. The main scenario that I've seen is that companies who have co-located teams at some point decide to add remote workers, for example, to increase their hiring and talent pool or increase diversity. And in many cases that means that people who are co-located in an office already will have in-group bias, there's easily an us versus them dynamic that develops unintentionally and because biases work that way. So I do think looking at the power dynamics and looking how to level the playing field in a way that everyone has equal opportunities to contribute is a really important thing to do. The added factor is also making sure that no one is just by themselves. That's easily a thing that happens when you just have one person who works remotely or they're in a time zone that no one else is in, so making sure they have support structures that they can rely on is really helpful. Otherwise, the biggest challenges I've seen in distributed teams are around communication, connection, and collaboration. I think connection especially and having trust across teammates, having good relationships that they can rely upon is really the basis that all teams need. And essentially the challenges around collaboration and communication are very much the same as in all co-located teams as well. It's just that the solutions to those don't come organically. Many practices that we know around building teams and that we've used traditionally just don't work that well for distributed teams. And so working with distributed teams also requires us to be not just more intentional about team building, but also requires us to be a bit more innovative in the approaches that we're taking and working out things with our teams and trying things out, iterating on them again, and figuring out what works for us and being deliberate about it, I think is really key. I I think one important thing that managers can do is develop good relationships with their teammates, because being able to rely on those is even more key in distributed teams than it is with teams that are in the same physical location. I also think that discussing practices with the team around how they collaborate in, for example, retrospectives is a really good format, because it allows everyone to contribute, it allows people to voice how they're feeling, how they're experiencing the collaboration, and then work together on improving collaboration practices, but also how the team communicates and how they interact on a daily basis. I think as managers or team leads, it's really important for us to keep a very close eye on how the team members are doing, because we don't have a lot of other signals to rely on. We don't get a lot of body language or see how someone is walking through the office in the day, and if their body language signals they're having a great day or if they're tired. Those kinds of things get lost, and so the relationships and checking in with people on a frequent basis, helping teammates also develop relationships across, so that the team becomes a team and is not just, it's not something that just develops organically, but we need to put actual effort and work into making it happen, not just ourselves through facilitation, but also through the encouragement that we give everyone on the team to contribute to it. I think diversity and inclusion are really foundational for us, especially as an industry that's been struggling with both for such a long time. So I believe our industry is still relatively homogeneous, and I think we need to change that. And the starting point that I always recommend to people is start with inclusion. Because what you want to avoid is having members of underrepresented groups join your company and then have to be the ones who speak up against what's not working, and have to be the ones that put in second shift labor and the emotional labor to fix it. So especially for anyone who's in a formal or an informal leadership role, I think all of us have really huge power. And acknowledging that kind of power that we have on our teams and in our relationships with others is a really good starting point. And I also think it's our responsibility to use that power to make a difference, like make our environments more inclusive. It starts with hiring practices, like looking out for what we're really looking for in our roles. Are our processes inclusive to diverse groups of people? Can people who have disabilities actually visit our office or participate in our hiring process? Do we discriminate because of biases that we have against certain groups? What kind of educational background are we looking for? Are we open to people who have different backgrounds from the traditional computer science degree that we already may have represented on our teams? So basically identifying what stopgaps we have in our hiring processes that could lead to people dropping out of it. So I think hiring, it's a complex thing and it's a hard thing to do and it's a hard thing to do well, but I think hiring is one area where we can have really huge impact. The other thing is also just looking at how people in our company are doing. So if we have members of underrepresented groups already understanding how they're doing, what's working for them, and then figuring out not what they can do to change things, but what we as people in power can do to make this environment better. And I also think using groups like employee resource groups or other employee resource initiatives to allow people to have a safe space to talk to one another, to share their experiences, but also use those spaces to drive change, to have support for them at the executive level, and actually listen to people, because I do think a lot is about understanding what experiences people have in our company, but also educating ourselves, reading upon what the history has been of many underrepresented groups in our industry, what challenges people have been struggling, because so many of these issues are about systemic issues and systemic oppression. And so I think especially as people who are privileged in many ways, it's our responsibility to understand that and work what we can to become allies to those groups, and then again improve the structures we have in our organizations to make them better places for diverse groups of people.